Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of. Right now, it's titled "Let's Talk Draft." Open the change, but welcome to the very first episode of Let's Talk Draft. I'm happy to be here with Frankie Abbott, my main man, Frankie Abbott. We're excited to get into this, the very first episode. But Frankie, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Very excited. It's time. It's finally here. We've been waiting down. We've been counting down. I'm very excited. Twitter might be hitting the fan. It might be fully going under, but let's talk draft. Let's talk Broncos. It's going to be here to stay and grow for you guys. So I'm excited to get into it.
Totally. Hey, and to everybody that's on Twitter right now, because I know that's where most of our listeners are at the moment. You guys can find us and comment in the comment section at the Let's Talk Broncos Facebook, the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube. Those are the two areas you can interact with us. Your comments will be highlighted on the screen. We'll answer your questions, all of that. But I'm excited to get into this. So let's hop right into this. I think that this very first episode, we're thinking first day of school, right? I want to introduce the podcast to the people. I want them to get used to both of us here on this podcast, kind of break down how our draft minds work a little bit. So let's get into it. I wanted to talk about former first-round picks. It could be anybody, or not just first-round picks, but former draft crushes, guys that you really had a draft crush in the beginning or a while ago, what got you into the draft, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, so I'll just go first right away because I've been just loving the draft for a long time. I remember just going through elementary school, middle school, watching guys we were talking before the pod started up, like Tavon Austin highlights, and just seeing where would those guys end up, importing Madden draft classes and eventually, getting into the actual scouting aspect of it once I actually learned what was happening on the film and stuff, and it's just been kind of a fun road, and that it's such a great time, man. What's so cool about if your team sucks, most of the teams in the NFL do, because as hard as it is, there's really only probably 5 to 8 really good teams. It's always fun to look at the draft. You can find that fun 5th round guard, that day 3 running back, that undrafted free agent running back that's just going to end up taking you to the stars, and you can brag to all your friends about how you knew that guy was going to be great before anybody else did. So, probably one of the first guys I remember being into was Cordero Patterson. Cordero Patterson's Tennessee tape, dude, was so exciting. The things that dude did as a returner were just hilarious. He was embarrassing dudes, and it's awesome to see how far he's come today. It's ridiculous that, just straight up watching old school highlight tapes. It's not like I was even scouting him, but just considering the athleticism and the spark that he showed in college and seeing how that's translated to the NFL today has just been so incredible.
Totally. Cordero Patterson, that's interesting, Frankie, because I also have a thing for that type of receiver. I'll be honest with you. I have a thing for that type of guy. I have a picture behind me. Let's see if we can find it real quick. Demaryius Thomas.
Oh, my God. There he is.
Demaryius Thomas. I have a thing for those big yak wide receivers like Cordero Patterson. Those are my, I have to watch myself when I'm scouting those type of receivers, like the Cordero Pattersons. One of my favorite draft crushes of all time, Broncos in Colorado. If you live in Colorado, you're going to be familiar with him. Laviska Shenault, who a lot of people were comparing to Cordero Patterson. That was one of my personal favorites right there. He was an awesome player. Big yards after catch, can juke people in open field. At CU, he was their red zone package guy. He was wildcat quarterback. He was running back. He was going to be wide receiver. He was going to do all of that different type of stuff. So I share that, I guess, type of receiver. I don't know if that you have.
And that's kind of the coolest part about them is it's they're not even receivers. They're just offensive weapons to a certain point. We're seeing that guys guys like Cordero are literally a running back now, guys like Laviska finally got to get out to a team that utilizes him somewhat correctly, and he's starting to do exciting things with the ball in their hands. It's just playmakers like that, you need more of them. They make the game more exciting to watch. And that's the thing is the cool thing is they can end up at schools like a Colorado, and you can still find those gems in the rough. And hell yeah, man. Laviska's a great call out.
Okay, so I'll name another one. This was one of my all-time favorite players. You've been following me on Twitter, you know about it. When I was doing this, one of mine was Jalen Phillips, and I know he's only in his second year, but I was such a fan that dude even followed me back because I was like posting so many clips of Jalen Phillips on my timeline. He was like, "Oh,
love." He knew.
Yeah, no, he was probably like, "This guy's a super fan." I was a huge Jalen Phillips fan. I remember even thinking, "Hey, if so and so isn't here, why not Jalen Phillips?" That's how talented I thought the guy was, and I still think he's that talented. I'm excited to see him pair up with Bradley Chubb now. I thought he was the best pass rusher on that team before the Bradley Chubb trade. Now that they have him on, that's a duo that you really have to watch for. Jalen Phillips, obviously, still very young, still maturing, but freak athlete. I thought he could win in so many different ways, which is why I had such a big draft crush on him. It was he could win with power. He could win with speed. He tested like out of the gym type of athlete. And yeah, that's the type of stuff you look for specifically at the edge position. Frankie, do you have any other ones?
To comment on Phillips too. Phillips has been an absolute monster this year. It's been really fun to see him like get to combine with Bradley Chubb. It's kind of funny because I'm sure like you were literally wishing, I hope he gets to play with Bradley Chubb here in Denver. Well, now he's playing with him out in Miami. It's kind of one of the things about it that kind of sucks. I've got so I really loved Antoine Winfield coming out of Minnesota. Like
I remember you liking him
hitting ability that like he just looked like an NFL ready player coming right out. And I mean, the second he got to the Buccaneers, he instantly was, now he's one of their better players in their secondary and he's already got a Super Bowl ring to his name. So he was a player that just, you could really see the refinedness in his game, never playing out of position, always playing within himself and just kind of understanding where he needed to be and just such a heady player. The reports coming out were just like, from all the coaches were how understanding and how coachable he was. And that's just such a big thing, he was a great prospect coming out. I loved Antoine Winfield.
And a guy that also, I mean, he made an immediate impact in the league. Mm-hmm. He was one of those guys that teams were trying to find the next of. I don't know if people know what I'm talking about, but I remember for years, everyone was looking for the next Von Miller. I remember watching the scouting combine and them being like, they'll throw up the Von Miller scouting combine graphic of what he tested as, and then that other guy. Antoine Winfield was one of those because he had an immediate impact as a rookie. And to even take a step further, that Bucs team won a Super Bowl, and he played a massive part in that defense taking that next step. He was a guy in that secondary, played a major role. Obviously, their cornerbacks took a huge step up that year. They were all young the year before, still young the next year, but improved. Antoine Winfield came in, and he was a star in that secondary right away. So I can't blame you for that one at all, Frankie.
Yeah. No, and one thing that was so cool, was just obviously with the draft, safety has been such a position that gets devalued a lot of the time. That one thing that's kind of sweet about players like Antoine Winfield, if you will, is that you can get those guys a little bit later in the first round. I know obviously we'll be talking about the Broncos draft a little bit, but it's kind of exciting to think about or not necessarily in the first, but you can find a lot of these higher end safeties that will get slipping that into the top 100 that I think they could end up looking at just to kind of, tie it into the whole Broncos draft.
1000%. And dude, I have to ask you, what do you think, and we're going a little off script here, but what do you think your biggest draft crush was that kind of missed, if that makes sense, that didn't work out?
Dude, so I really liked Josh Rosen. I like Josh Rosen a lot. Not a lot, but Josh, that was obviously when Denver was picking pretty early on. And I had convinced myself that Josh Rosen was going to be just an answer. I thought and this was also me thinking that Jared Goff was pretty good, but I thought Josh Rosen was it, man. I was really hyped on him. I thought he was a smart player that threw with a lot of accuracy, a lot of touch. He could layer throws in between stuff, and just did not work out that way on the multiple teams that he saw. I liked his UCLA tape, but apparently I was completely off.
Yeah, no, for sure. Mine was probably Tavon Austin.
Tavon,
the best highlight film in the world. That was before I really started actually watching the film. But his highlight film had me going. I thought this guy was going to be the best ever at that time. I was younger and it's still fun. You like going to watch the YouTube videos of the draft prospects. I think a lot of us in the chat or anyone watching can relate to that. And Tavon Austin was that dude. But hey, I want to answer a question in the chat here by Bill. Frankie, and I'll bring this to you and I'll answer as well. What do you all think Denver's biggest need is going into the draft, or does it or does it depend what happens with Hackett and other coaches?
So I'll kind of take my first crack at this one. So, I mean, I think first of all, it does kind of depend upon the coaches. We don't necessarily know what kind of scheme is going to be getting run, obviously. So a little bit of kind of question marks as to what are going to be the biggest needs so far. But I think obviously we all know this offense needs to get fixed somehow, man. Either that's going to be finding a starter along the offensive line, whether that's finding a legitimate weapon, whether that be a running back, since we don't necessarily know how Javonte Williams is going to look at the beginning of next season, and even with him, we're going to need a second horse probably. Our receivers are a little bit inconsistent. That if there's a super valuable target there, I think they need to go for it. Really just best player available in an offensive position that fits the scheme, because while it's easy to really want an offensive tackle that we all like, and I think we'll get into this a little bit in the next episode for a little bit of a spoiler, there's a lot of cool tackles in this class, but there's a lot of diverse tackles too, where if you're running a scheme and the tackle that fits that scheme best in the draft isn't available, there might not be a guy that's kind of right behind that. Some of the guys just aren't going to work. So I'd probably say just BPA on offense.
Yeah, no, you definitely could do best player available offense. Like I was talking about this on Twitter. I was talking about this on the Let's Talk Broncos, the Let's Talk Broncos podcast. But like the Broncos offense is so far away from being good right now. In my brain, at least, I really think that we need to start like the Broncos could use a new play caller. They could use a new offensive line, like generally speaking, a new offensive line. You have to worry about running back. That Javonte Williams injury was a big deal. And then at wide receiver, I don't think the Broncos have a lot of players you like at the wide receiver position, but I'm not so sure that they have a number one, a go-to guy, a guy that makes all the rest better. I don't think we have that. I think we have serviceable players that are good, players that could be 2 or 3s. I think Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, and Courtland Sutton all can start. But are they ideal number ones, any of them? I don't think so. That's kind of where I land on there. I also think the biggest need right away would be offensive line. Because you have 5 of them on that offensive line, and really, like the offensive line that we fielded this last game, all 5 could be replaced. Mm-hmm. I really think that all 5 could be replaced. There's no secure guy on there or guy that I'm like, we can't find better than. Yeah. So if there is a player at any 5 of those spots in the draft that comes up and you think that's an immediate upgrade, I wouldn't be mad at that pick at all. And I don't care the position, especially knowing that this is probably going to be a later first.
No, and I think you're entirely right. Because, you see, especially along the interior where you can find those guys whenever you need them. And, like outside of Quinn and even Quinn, we've seen a little bit of regression. And it's just kind of like, yeah, dude, that offensive line, it just needs bodies and it needs talent. The whole entire offense just needs infusions of talent. But thanks for the question, guys. Seriously, send them all in and we'll answer them.
Yes, sir. What's up, Robert? Happy to see you in the chat, man. But moving on, I think that we should talk about, like I said, this is going to be our introductory to school. Everybody needs to figure out or like get to know us better. So Frankie, what is your favorite position to study? Do you have a favorite position, something that really you get excited for every single draft season?
Oh yeah. I like watching outside corners. I think that's like one of the most underrated. Like you need so many corners, not underrated at all, because obviously teams draft a lot of them and they draft them very high, but like it is such an important position and you can find them all throughout. It's such a cool position to see. It's one of the more difficult positions, I'd say, especially in the NFL and translating, because a lot of these guys, you kind of have to look at them and say, can this guy do things that he might not have had to do in college? A lot of these guys kind of play a lot more of a single scheme where they'll just have to, or a lot of a single type of coverage where they might get asked to do a lot more different things when they get to the NFL. And I just think that's such an exciting thing, especially when you look at this year's class. There's so many big bodied freak alien guys, kind of like the Pat Surtains that we have on the Broncos right now, who's just 6'2", long as can be, and then just still runs like he's just a gazelle or something. The change of direction is just absolutely incredible. So, outside corner for me has just been one of my favorites to watch for a long time. I played corner. I did not have the size nor the skill to at all have an impact whatsoever, but it just made me fall in love with the position because, you get the opportunity to beat up on these guys, there's so many different types, and I especially love the guys that can impose their will a little bit on a receiver, cause a lot of disruption in routes. I love a guy who's good with their hands and
So, Frankie, do you have a favorite archetype at corner? Is it those big, tall,
Oh yeah.
fast guys? That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, I really like just the kind of the aliens, but I also just like the long arms. I like guys that have really good press technique, again, really strong hands, and just I like a really good ability to play the run. One thing that was really fun about and I guess Vic Fangio really ingrained this to me because I mean this was just something that was so fun scouting for the Broncos the past few years. I love me a corner that can read out, plays and just go up and make a play in the run game if it's on a screen, work his way through blocks. JC Horn was probably like one of my favorite corners I've ever gotten to, like not up close and personal scout, but really in-depth scout, because he just is everything that I love in a corner. He's scrappy as hell. He beats receivers up at the line, and he comes up and makes plays in the run. And he hits people really hard, and I like that.
So, okay, I get that. So my favorite type of corners are kind of the opposite of yours, Frankie. I fell in love with some of these corners that play really bigger than what they actually are. What is the guy's name on the Raiders? He's a nickel corner. I can't remember his name, and it's gonna drive me insane.
Hobbs or Rocky Sin?
Ooh, it's I don't know. It's gonna drive me insane.
Go to our lads.
Okay, I like corners that are bigger than they are, or smaller, and then they play really big. I like quicker than fast guys. I like guys that can change direction really fast. Amik Robertson. There you go. Thank you, Bill. Amik. Amik was my
Bill.
Ooh, that was my guy in the draft. Amik was he was a guy that played so much bigger than he actually was. He was going to go up and defend in the run game really well. A point that I share with you, I really enjoyed that. The thing that I most look for in corners, though, is like the guys that can really change direction, and I value more guys that I know I can trust in man coverage, which is where something like that pops, right? You need to be able to change direction. You need to be able to shadow guys. And Greg Newsome was an example of that. Newsome, perfect. He was a taller guy, and that was a draft crush of mine. I had him my number one corner. And Broncos fans, I'm sorry. I even had him over Patrick Surtain on my billboard.
I had JC Horn over Patrick Surtain.
So, okay, we were both wrong. But the we're both wrong.
What this is about, guys.
Yeah, exactly. But both looked like pretty good players. Greg Newsome has been injured. That was concern for him coming out of college. JC Horn obviously injured that first year, but this year looks terrific. But yeah, anyways, Frankie, my favorite position to study by far. I look forward to it every single year. I love watching edge rushers. Like you, that was a position I played when I played football. And I don't know, there is something to that where it's like you just have a better understanding of it knowing it, like, or having played it. You don't have to do as much studying or learning about it like I've had to do with wide receiver or cornerback or anything like that. I have a good understanding of it. And edge is that position for me. I think pound for pound, edge might be the freakiest position in the NFL athletically. I like watching those crazy athletes go at it. You have all different type of archetypes of player. You have the Von Millers of the world that are kind of smaller, you know what I mean? But they can really bend a corner. Their agility is off the charts. And then you have guys like Myles Garrett, who does everything. He's a massive, humongous dude. He could get into your chest plate. He's going to drive you back. He can throw you around like a rag doll, but you can also turn the corner a little bit. You know what I mean? You have all these different types of guys that fit into that box. And I don't know. That's just a position I really like to study.
No, yeah, edge rusher has been so fun to watch over the past few years, especially because like it seems like teams have really figured out almost how to scout that position a little bit better, if you will. Like it seems like it's just really cool seeing so many good edge rushers come out. It feels like we're finding new guys every single year that are just getting bumped up the charts every single year, and it's great, man. Edge rusher's so sweet. Who would you say? Who was your favorite in the class from like last year?
Last year's edge class.
It was a deep
I really liked my favorite edge rusher in last year's class was Thibodeau. I thought that Thibodeau should have been the number one pick. When you talk about a guy, I think he got knocked a lot because, you have all those reports on personality and like, is he the type of player we want in a locker room? All this type of talk. I don't scout off that type of stuff. I don't look at that. I base my evaluation straight off the film. 1000%. I don't know enough about injuries. I'm not a doctor. I can't evaluate that. I don't know enough about the guy. I can only hear what other people are perceiving his personality as. I'm not going to scout at all off that. I'm going off the personality unless there's something that I can really substantiate and say that's true. I don't believe in that. Dibs wasn't one of them. They just thought he was kind of arrogant, if I remember correctly.
There were so many weird things. People were saying he couldn't bend around the edge a little bit.
Yeah,
like it made no sense. No, right. I completely agree. He should have got one.
Right. Tibbs was my favorite edge rusher at the time. Do you have one?
From last season, I guess I really liked Jermaine Johnson. Jermaine Johnson was really cool just because I think I got to watch a lot of his Senior Bowl tape. I guess, yeah, I'd probably go Tibbs as well. Trayvon Walker is really cool, and he's still a very fun player in the NFL. It's just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if I really know if Trayvon Walker, like, he is the ultimate test of, like, is the athleticism the ultimate trait, you know? And I guess obviously it might be, but I'd like to see if Kayvon Walker can just end up being more of that guy, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I liked him too. Florida State, obviously, your guy there was a big physical guy. He could drive you into the quarterback really easily. He was a guy that people fell in love with around Senior Bowl, right?
Yep.
Because he came in, I think he participated in the first day.
He was so dominant in one-on-ones, and he was just so strong in bullying his way through every single offensive tackle he faced. He was just so fun to watch, and it's like the Jets really loaded up on talent this year with him getting Sauce, you know, getting the running back, getting Hall, you know.
And talk about Breece Hall. He looks terrific as well, right?
Yeah.
Before his injury, now out for the season. But anyways, I want to move to Bill's question here, and let me see if I can find it. Any player you'd like to trade up for, or do we have too many needs overall to bum that many picks? And the way I will say this, Bill, is that we haven't gone completely into the class. I just released a draft article today just on like the three big names in the offensive tackle class. I don't know, Frankie, do you, through what you've seen, because we both haven't watched a ton yet, is there a player that you would go, I could see myself trading up for him, or is there no one yet?
So it's kind of interesting because we kind of almost had this discussion a little bit earlier today. I think there's the slightest chance there's an offensive tackle. His name is Peter Skoronski. We'll probably touch on him a little bit more next week. I think if the Broncos look to stay in this outside zone scheme, he is a shorter armed. I don't want to spoil too much. He is a shorter armed tackle that might end up slipping a little bit.
Right.
And if he ends up falling into maybe the teens and they wouldn't have to give up too much to go up and to get a player like that, I wouldn't hate it. But again, we haven't gotten too in depth into like everything yet. We've kind of started, you know, wetting our beaks into a lot of the top guys. We'll kind of find a lot of more of our favorites as we go along. But I mean, I think a good point is what you're saying, where it's like they don't have that many picks this year. They have 5 this year. They have 7 next year, I believe. Or they might be up to 6 after the Bradley Chubb trade. But like, they really don't have that much capital, and there are a lot of holes they need to fill. It's kind of interesting to see what they'll do after free agency and everything as well. So it's really a question of, do you need more, you know, a singular quality player? Or would you maybe like to have more, you know, depth pieces? You know, that's kind of the big question that'll have to be asked. And I think at this point, I'd really like an impact player, and I'm willing to trade up and get a guy if they find someone they like.
Yeah, for sure. I am always pretty much under the belief it's rare that I want to trade up for a player. I'll be honest. I find myself, since I started doing this, and it was probably like 3 years ago when I started studying the draft, really in depth, like watching film, breaking things down, raking players. Zach and I had a draft podcast like a year ago, or I think it was like a year and a half ago. And I always find myself every single year saying, I want more day 2 picks. I want more day 2 picks. I want more day 2 picks. That's just where it's like, hey guys, at the end of the day, you want more opportunity at this thing. There are a ton of busts every single year, a ton of busts in the draft. And I just find myself wanting more picks. But anyways, let's move on to D-Bronx question here. Shout out to D-Bronx for being in the chat. He says, what question in this class looks strong? Which one look weak? Now, we haven't watched a ton at this. I've really only watched offensive tackle, but I can kind of speak to what looks weak a little bit. Can you?
Yeah, I think the interior of the offensive line right now looks a little bit weak from what I've kind of gathered. I haven't seen too many prospects getting a lot of buzz so far for that. I don't think that the inside linebacker class actually looks pretty good, if I'm being completely honest. Cornerback class looks pretty good, and I think the tackle class, like, I think there's a lot of talent at the top for the tackle class. Like, not a lot of, like, I wouldn't say it's going to be like last year or 2 years ago where there's like 4 in the top 15, but I think there probably could be like, 6 to 8 in the top like 50, something like that, maybe more.
Totally. I don't think that. So from what I've seen so far, and things could change, right? This thing could evolve once I get testing numbers, more information on these players. Things can always change, but I don't think there's like an Evan Neal in this class at tackle. But I do think there's a ton of tackles that I like.
Yeah,
and that's something that I would consider strong at the position. I've gone through the tackles at this point. I really like Paris Johnson. If you're looking for a tackle that can really move and is athletic, Paris Johnson is great. He has all the tools in the world to make something happen and to be a franchise left tackle at this next level. Like the reach, the height, the weight, the athleticism. He can hit landmarks that are absurd. Sometimes he blocks really well in open field. Sometimes he gets a little too aggressive, I think. But if you're looking for a guy that you can mold into a franchise left tackle, Paris Johnson one. Frankie, I know Frankie, and I'll let you speak about him real quick before we move on. I want you to speak about Darnell Wright from Tennessee real quick.
Man, Darnell Wright is just such a clean prospect to me. I mean, the way this guy, he's an absolute bulldozer. He's an absolute hog in the trenches. He knocks people aside. He opens up gaps, and just the dude's got great hands. He knocks dudes onto their butt. I love the strength he plays with and the ferocity. He goes up against incredible competition and he shuts them down, And I think he's probably a guy that if I was to look at, who are we going to trust as a day one starter, I think that he's probably going to be the guy in this class. That's not me necessarily saying he's going to be the best tackle in this class. But if I had to say right now, like, who do I look at and say, I think if you were to put them as a starting tackle in the NFL, once the season's done next year, I think he might be the best one at that point. I just think he's pretty clean.
Yeah. You know what? And I wrote an article on Paris Johnson, Darnell Wright, Peter Skoronski. Is that how you pronounce his name?
I believe it's Skoronski,
from Northwestern. These are guys I all wrote up and written about today. If you want to find my guys' thoughts, you can find it there. But we are talking about tackles next episode. Hey, guys, so make sure you're tuning into that. That's, I think, the biggest position in need is position of extreme value tackle, right? You always see him go really high. You see like really raw guys even end up in the late first round or early second round. So this position every team is dying to find. So I'll save my thoughts there a little bit, but I wanted to move on, Frankie. What players are you excited to watch? Have you watched any players that get you really excited, maybe even needs that aren't the Broncos? You know what I mean? Who are you looking forward to studying?
So I got a few. So my first guy, I've got Will McDonald out of Iowa State. He's been a crush of mine for the past couple of years. He kind of reminds me just so much of like Brian Burns. He's a little undersized, but like he doesn't really play like it. And this dude is just a tornado out there. Like he does such incredible things to tackles when he actually gets the opportunity to rush off the edge, which Iowa State doesn't let him do very much, which is very frustrating, but that's okay. Yeah. But he's a dude I love a ton. He's on Feldman's freak list. So, I mean, he's someone that, is just going to test out of the moon. For anyone who doesn't follow that, that's kind of just who's going to hit the combine and just blow it all up. And that's kind of the list where you find that before the start of every season, Feldman's freak list. And, yeah, he's just an absolute blast. He rushes in the Big 12, so, I mean, he gets the opportunity to go up against teams that are passing the ball a lot, and he's just a lot of fun. He plays at Iowa State, so he plays in a pretty decent defense. They've had a lot of pieces around him. When Denver drafted Ayuma Uwazurike, tough name to say. My bad. I will be butchering tons of names on this podcast.
Frankie.
I'm going to do my best. Won't do that. But it was kind of crazy because you're just like, there's such, differences in size. For anyone who doesn't know, Ioma's like 6'6", 320 plus. And then you've got this guy who's probably like, I think Will McDonald's probably like 6'3", and he looks like they're listing him at like 245. He's got to be rushing at like 235, 230 sometimes. So this dude's wiry, and you're just watching like it was just a battering ram combined with just like a ballerina running next to it. And I don't want to make that sound like bad at all. The ballerina was incredible and beautiful to watch. It was magical. It was like watching, you know, a ballet show. I don't know, but he's just awesome. He does a lot of incredible things. He's twitchy, he's bendy, and that's one of my favorite guys to watch every week.
Yeah, I'll build off of yours. I'll do a player that I've seen in the past. I studied this player last year, and I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited that he's coming out this year. I'm going to go with Zay Flowers from Boston College. Him and Phil Yurkovich has been connecting for a few years now, a couple years, and he is an awesome, dynamic player. If you're looking for a player that can make things happen in open field, if you're looking for a field stretcher, he's smaller and he's slider, right? So I think he's more of a slot than he is a outside your X or Z receiver. But he's a guy that's going to fit in your slot really well. The thing that separates him, so let's say from a KJ Hamler, right? Because I think everybody watching right now understands KJ Hamler, understands his play style. The thing that separates Zay Flowers from a KJ Hamler, in my opinion, while maybe a little slower, I think he's better at the catch point. I think he's a guy that can go up and climb the ladder and make a catch on occasion. I think he's that type of guy, and I think he's a little more complete of a prospect than KJ Hamler was coming out of Penn State. Now, that's nothing to take away from Penn State or from KJ Hamler, because I think KJ Hamler was a terrific down the field threat. I think that was his best attribute. Do you agree?
He was really good at tracking the ball. He could find everything.
Right. I think that was KJ Hamler's best trait, was his ability to go deep. I think Zay Flowers' best is working underneath while being really fast and explosive, and then also can go down the field a little bit. Maybe not to the KJ Hamler level, but a little bit. Is there anyone else you want to throw out there, or do you have anything else to add on to Zay Flowers if you watch any of him?
I haven't gotten to watch any of Zay Flowers. I know I'm excited to. Jurkovich had a lot of hype coming into this year. I don't really know where a lot of it went. I haven't peeped a lot of the Boston.
I like Jurkovich a little.
Yeah, Jurkovich, again, it just seems like he's kind of the guy that's just completely, I don't know. I don't know what he's been up to, so I'll have to give him a look. But yeah, Zay Flowers sounds like an exciting guy. Those smaller slot options are always kind of tough. You know, we always kind of you always feel like you can project, but then once it gets that NFL next speed and you get the increase in contact, a little more bodies over the middle, it can always be so hard to project those guys. But there's such an immense need for ability to create before and after the catch in the NFL that I would love it if a guy like Zay Flowers ended up being a factor in the league. That'd be sick. I do got another guy, Chase Brown, running back out of Illinois. One of those crazy athletes I've been wanting to talk about from Illinois. They have two Brown brothers at Illinois. They're both freak athletes. Another Feldman freakless guy, but Chase Brown has the most 10-plus yard rushes in college football. He also has 69 missed tackles forced. So he's just an absolute battering ram who can also make you miss and then break a long run. Joey looks up. Never mind. It looked like you were frozen for a second. Has 800 yards after contact, and he's just a beast from what I've seen on the few breakaway runs that I've gotten to watch. And the entire Illinois offense has just been crazy explosive.
Oh, really? Illinois?
Yeah. So I've been pretty excited to get to watch him because
you were saying, Frankie, that Illinois has a bunch of freaks that you're excited to watch.
Yeah, I mean, they're a good team this year. Especially their defensive side of the ball. They have two corners that are really good. His twins on the other side of the ball. And yeah, I'm a little bit in love with the Illinois team, and I'm excited to dive more into them this year because I think running back is a position. I saw someone asking earlier if I'd consider running back in the first round. I don't want to be, too aggressive, but hell no, I would not. I do not want to see that. I know Bijan Robinson is an incredible prospect, but I really just do not think that I don't think that's the best allocation of resources for the Denver Broncos in this scenario. I think there's so many other things that they need to be looking to do. If Bijan slips, maybe, but I just think that's kind of just running in place at a certain point. I think that there's so many better ways to spend a first round pick for a team that needs to do that's just more of a luxury pick that I don't want to see them make. And every year, guys, and we're going to highlight a ton of them this year, there's going to be guys taken in the 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, guys like Dameon Pierce, Ramondre Stevenson, that you do not need to super high reach up for these running backs, man. You don't got to do it. You can find guys later in day 3 that are just as productive. Spend those early picks on the impact positions, and it's kind of my philosophy. So no, I would not do that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll test you a little bit on this.
Okay.
Do you think if Bijan was there, let's say the 49ers win the Super Bowl?
Okay.
If he was there at pick 32, would you take him?
I guess maybe at that point, yes. But again, it's just kind of like, I hope the offseason goes well, because I mean, we could be looking at it like, man, the offensive line is still starting, one of these tackles who we don't have much faith in, and we don't have much of a guard. And it's kind of like, I don't know. It would be one of those things where maybe I can be talked into it. Maybe I can be excited for it at the time, but I feel like it'd be hard to me to look at this current iteration of the roster and say, if you had Bijan Robinson and a couple like veteran free agents, like that's a contending offense. Now I'd kind of be like, I don't know, man. I think you need some other types of pieces to work out. Like throwing in like a quality offensive lineman would really help us. I don't want to be too tackle bro-ish. I don't want to be too, that's the way to the future. But I think it's just been such a neglect of this team. And that doesn't have to be the only pick. There can be obviously tons of other positions, but you just see so much value in these guys going in these later rounds at running back that I'm not a fan. Not a fan.
Okay, I'll give one more person before we close out here on who we think, unless you have anything else to add after, of course, but unless I'll give one more player on who I'm excited to watch, and I've only seen it live, so like this is why I'm excited to watch him. Kelly Ringo from Georgia, the cornerback. I am so excited to watch that guy. He is. So the only reason I'm excited to watch him at this point is one, because he's ranked high on everybody's lists. Right? I was looking at Dan Brugler's list. By the way, everyone go. If you want to learn more about the draft, go listen. Go read Dan Brugler's stuff. He's sourced and he's like informative. So he has a lot of good stuff on there. And he's number 6 ranked prospect on Dan Brugler's last top 50. But the play I'm specifically highlighting here, and this is the only play I've really watched other than, just other live games and stuff like that. But it really impressed me in that Tennessee game. And I think people, if you watch that Georgia-Tennessee game, you know what I'm talking about. It was a fly route, Hendon Hooker, quarterback at Tennessee, threw it deep. I forget who the receiver was. It was either Tillman or Hyatt, probably. And Ringo made himself the receiver on that play. He played it perfectly. When you're talking about getting physical, press at the beginning, pushing to the receiver out to the boundary to make it a more difficult catch, then also turning his head around and locating the ball to make himself the receiver on the play. All of this while looking like a running back, he's built like a running back. His build, from what I saw just in passing so far, it reminds me of like Pac-Man Jones or something like that. A thicker, not very tall, but could get it done tall type corner that looks extremely physical. A guy that's not going to be pushed off his spot. But yeah, I don't know. Have you watched any Kelly Ringo?
I'm glad you brought up Ringo. Ringo's one of my favorites. One of my notes I wrote up about him. It might be Keeley. I think it might be Keeley. I'm honestly not sure. I'm going to go with Ringo. But one of my first notes I wrote about him is he looks like the Predator, and I don't mean that at all in a bad way. He's got the dreads, and like you're saying, he's just thick. He's like 6'2", and he's just like the Hulk at the line.
Is he 6'2"?
I'm pretty like he's a big boy, and like he moves very well for his size. Like he doesn't quite have like the Pat Surtain level of like, oh my God, how are you even doing this at this size? But like he has some pretty decent change of direction ability. And like you said, his play in man coverage, he's really good in trail. I don't love him too much in zone, but I mean, he'll get better at that stuff once he gets to the league. Like he does a lot of fun stuff, and all the members of that Georgia defense just seem to come into the league so ready to play. Kirby Smart gets those guys so prepared. He plays in the SEC all the time, and like you said, he's going up against guys like Jalen Hyatt, and he's just shutting them down. Like he's just a really good prospect. He's been one of my favorite guys to watch. I mean, he's just like one of those guys I like, where he's just a physical bully at the line, and he can do it all. He's got the physical traits to be able to run with you downfield, and he's just awesome.
So I didn't know he was 6'2". That's why I was kind of giving him that Pac-Man Jones vibes is what I was getting from him. I thought he was more like 6 foot.
No.
5'11", 6 foot. He's 6'2" and 215 pounds. That is a big, massive corner. More about this, he's a world-class junior sprinter from Arizona. So, like, you're talking about tools. He's definitely going to have the tools there. But anyways, Frankie, anything else to add here before I close out?
No, nothing really too much. I'm excited to get this going with you. I'm glad everybody got to tune into the comments. Thanks for asking questions. Bree is behind the glass doing all the little stuff for us. So shout out to Bree. Done an awesome job, Bree. Go follow Bree. And yeah.
Yes.
Let's talk draft to the moon. Working title in progress. Let's talk draft with Frankie, Joey, and Frankie.
Yes. More to come. That is, and by the way, Bree is at Bree Maces 303. Everybody here should know Bree Maestas. Go give her a follow. She has a radio show. You go make sure you're listening to that. She does terrific work, everything like that. But anyways, guys, Frankie, where can they find your work, man?
Follow me on Twitter. I'm at Frankie's Film on Twitter. Twitter might be going down. I made a TikTok. I have TikTok. I'm posting film on TikTok. If anyone wants to follow me on TikTok, it's weird. I don't really know how it works. But yeah. Frankie's Film NFL on TikTok. If you want to.
What are you doing on there, Frankie?
I literally take the film I put on Twitter and I put it on TikTok. So there you go. If you're just trying to be like, if Twitter goes down, boom, you're not losing out on the Frankie's Film aspect of the film. So there's that. I write over at Mile High Report. I put out a weekly thing every day. And yeah, I do film reviews over there for the Broncos and complain about the Broncos all the time on Twitter. So make sure you're tuning in for that.
Awesome, Frankie. Yeah, everyone make sure you're going to follow Frankie at Frankie Films. We're excited to get this thing going. This is going to be a blast. Next episode is going to be offensive tackles. If you're looking for future, how the Broncos can finally find that right tackle, go make sure you're listening to the next podcast because we're going to be highlighting that.
The Broncos obviously. No more Quinn Bailey.
Exactly. I mean, we haven't had a guy since Orlando Franklin, and I think that was 2013.
And he's in the booth now.
Yeah, the guy's a radio personality. I mean, this has been so long. He's lost like 200 pounds at this point.
Exactly, he's a whole different guy at this point. It'd be like if the Colts haven't had a center since Jeff Saturday. Like, come on, guys. That's who's coaching the team now.
Yeah,
like, come on.
Exactly. So make sure you're listening to the next episode. Also, if you guys want to get a head start on the tackle episode, make sure you're reading my work at Mile High Sports. I released just 3 names I threw out there, but I did a really deep dive, I think, on all 3 of those. I spent a lot of time on all of them. I wrote them up. So make sure you're following that at Mile High Sports. You can find all of that at Mile High Sports. And then make sure you're following me at JR Drafts. And then, yeah, guys, that's all I really have today. But until next time, go